Football Enquirer with Ross Dellenger and Steven Godfrey. I am Andy Staples. We can combine these two big SEC games, Oklahoma going to Alabama, Texas going to Georgia, because the stakes are similar in both. It is a two-loss team that is fighting for its playoff life, playing against a one-loss team that can spend a loss. But these are huge games. These are kind of the games when Oklahoma and Texas decided to join the SEC, when the SEC decided to invite them. This is what they envisioned.
Yes. You wanted mid-November sort of play-in type, elimination type games. While this doesn't eliminate, either team, but you've got really like pressure-packed sort of games here in really probably fun, cool environments, obviously, in Tuscaloosa and Athens. So it's exciting. And I don't know, we talked about this before. Obviously, Oklahoma and Texas, if they lose, their chances, fall significantly to make the playoff. But there's probably going to be a 9-3 SEC team squeak in this thing. I'm still convinced. So it may be one of these teams, right? So the big thing here, as we've learned from the committee over the years, is that don't get beat too badly, right? We saw that Alabama last year against Oklahoma, right? The same matchup here. They lost 24-3 in Norman, and sort of the committee members sort of like, pointed to that because it was such a drubbing and such an ugly performance. So if you're going to lose Texas and Oklahoma, be competitive. It will help if you end up running the table after this.
We talk about a 9-3 situation. I know a lot of people are trying to do the math in their head. Let's take someone like Ole Miss, who would need a catastrophic finish to this season, right? Because we have challenged this idea of like they've punched their playoff ticket. They're in automatically, Ross. I know you were in Oxford this week for a story that's coming out on Yahoo, I assume next week. If Ole Miss
later today, probably.
I'm sorry?
Or maybe it's already out.
Maybe. All right. Oh, yeah, that's right. We operate in the liminal time space in the podcasting world. It's not actually now, nor is it before or after. Yeah. How's that? Okay. We've covered our bases.
When will then be now? Soon.
So I was asked this week, I was doing a radio hit. I was asked about what's Ole Miss's resume item? LSU has fallen apart. Tulane is admirable, but not currently ranked in the top 25 of the playoff rankings, right? South Florida's above them. Maybe that win looks better at the end. So you go to Oklahoma on the road. Well, what if Oklahoma starts to lose out? What if they lose this weekend to Alabama? All of a sudden, could a 9-3 Ole Miss team make it in? I guess I'm sort of challenging your presumption that a 9-3 SEC team would make it in if we all start dinging each other's resume down the stretch.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that a 9-3 Ole Miss will make it in. Texas or Oklahoma, maybe more so, right?
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
We've talked about this a lot on my On3 show, and I think my co-host there, Ari, makes the salient point here. Oklahoma maybe can make it at 9-3, but one of the 9 has to be this Saturday in Tuscaloosa.
Yes.
Yeah. Can't afford a bad loss. Yeah.
Or Texas needs to beat Georgia or A&M.
Right.
Okay.
Right. They already have a bad loss. Yeah. Yep. So they don't need another one. And I don't even know who they play in between.
Arkansas.
Yeah, that would be a bad loss.
That would be a very bad loss.
That would be very bad.
Don't want to do that. Yeah. And everything's got to break right sort of for, one of these two. I guess, is there anybody else in the SEC that could, get 9-3? Oh, Vanderbilt and Tennessee, right? Conceivably Missouri, I guess, could be at 9-3
yeah,
too. You could have a big bunch there,
Yeah, I think those would have, the Oklahoma with a win at Alabama or Texas with a win at Georgia or a win against A&M, that's a much stronger case.
When Oklahoma won at Tennessee, right? So you kind of got that. And then Texas beat Vanderbilt, so you sort of got that matchup too.
This is this is the exact point in the calendar where the idea of it's the NFL every week in the SEC, we sort of shift narrative into we're beating each other's resume up. And it allows for criticism from other leagues or from other fan bases to say, well, if you're touting this as the best win, why did they just lose two? And that's the sort of I call it the reservoir dog circle of the SEC down the stretch in November, is that it gets hard to argue on behalf of some of these 2 and 3 loss teams, which is where we left it last year with Alabama and South Carolina.
Which for a 9-3 to be an SEC 9-3 team to get in the playoff, you do have to have some other things like break right in the Big Ten, especially, right? You got to have USC take another loss, because if USC finishes 10-2, and that would include a win against Oregon next week, then you could have USC and Oregon both 10-2, and potentially both get in over a 9-3 SEC. So you sort of need some things to break right when it comes to that. In Michigan too, right? Michigan's at 7-2.
Yes.
You probably don't need Michigan to go on this crazy run and go to 10-2, because that fourth Big Ten team would probably take the place of a fifth 9-3 SEC team.
The Vanderbilt rooting resume this week, or not resume, let's call it a itinerary syllabus. You ready? Ohio State has to beat Michigan. USC and Iowa need to take at least probably one more loss each, and they play each other. Okay, Iowa's probably done, but you need USC to take. Okay, you need USC to take a loss. You need the Big Ten to be at 3 bids. So Oregon basically underneath the 2 teams that play in Indianapolis. And then obviously you have to win out. Notre Dame losing would be ideal as well.
I think Vanderbilt at 10-2 does get in as long as Alabama and Georgia hold serve this weekend. Alabama and Georgia not holding serve is where you have a problem. But yes, if Ohio State beats Michigan, that would be a huge help to any team that's trying. Because if Michigan beats Ohio State, or if USC beats Oregon, that's not knocking them out of the playoff. That's not knocking that losing team out of the playoff. So that's just another spot that you've lost. So,
Andy, do you want to discuss our plum position or ideal situation in Athens?
Because I love this.
We arrived
this week.
Apparently, you and I arrived at this without talking to each other, because I've done a couple radio hits on this, and we talked about it on my other show on Phantom Island. Georgia has a sort of luxury path to the second round of the playoffs. Let's break this down, Andy.
Okay. So Georgia, well, it's not easy, because they play Texas this weekend, and then they've got to play Georgia Tech at the end of the regular season, which is another tough game. Non-conference, doesn't affect their SEC situation.
Right.
But what we've discussed is Georgia needs to beat Texas to have the best possible record, but then it needs Alabama and Texas A&M to keep winning, so that Georgia does not have to play in the SEC championship game.
Yes, and
which
I know
is crazy to say.
Everyone's oh my God, why would you not want to go to Atlanta? Well, here's why. One, you're going to be in Atlanta the week before, because clean old-fashioned hate is moving to Mercedes-Benz, I think at least just for this year, as Georgia.
Yeah, you're going to be in Atlanta either way. It's just a matter of how close you are to that IKEA. Is the question.
You can't see it on frame. I'll take for those of you watching, I'll point in this direction. I can see Mercedes-Benz from my hotel room. I'm in Atlanta currently. So Georgia would play Georgia Tech in Atlanta, win out, hold serve. You would then want to cheer on Texas A&M and Alabama to meet each other in Atlanta, because, look, if you're a dog fan, of recent, you have two national championships. You are a postseason perennial. You take a week off. You don't care about going back down to the bins for the SEC championship game. And also, there's a small issue of what happened last year against Texas in the SEC championship. Yes, Georgia won that game, but boys, were either of you there?
I was not.
Okay,
it was a Pyrrhic victory.
That game, even on the TV broadcast, I was not there. Even on the TV broadcast, I was watching that with some football people, arms folded, and thinking, man, they are thumping right now. That was a highly physical Texas-Georgia game last year, in which Georgia sustained some significant losses that then carried over into the Sugar Bowl loss to Notre Dame. Now, if you're sitting at home and you're thinking, we'll take this off, we don't need another SEC championship banner, that probably, and this is where our logic arrives, takes us to the 5 slot. And the 5 slot in the playoff is going to play the 12, which this year is, without a doubt, going to be the Group of 5 champion. This year, and I'm Mr. Group of 5 here, all right? Georgia Southern, all that stuff. Not great. Not a dominant team coming out of there. No Ashton Genty running for any of these teams, correct? So if you're Georgia, you now get a home game in the first round against a Group of 5 team. That feels like the most manageable path of any playoff scenario in terms of health and preparing to play the next 2 quality opponents in advance of a national championship.
So this is and I think that there are some people, even at Georgia and at a lot of these schools, that actually don't want to play in their championship game. And guess what? That's a pretty good sign of a system that's broken.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I think that there are two things that, as great as the 12-team playoff is, there were sort of two things that have cropped up that probably aren't good and would necessitate change. One of them was changed. So number one, it's the fact that if you get a bye, you don't get to host a game on your campus at your stadium. That's a problem.
That's more broken than skipping the
and hopefully they'll eventually come to their senses and change that. I mean, I'm all for doing it like the NFL. Like you're at home until the Super Bowl.
But
if they wanted to have the semi, like make Rose and Sugar your designated semis, and just move the national title game around, I can live with that too.
Killing some bowls is always
second round needs to be at home.
Killing some bowls is always a good idea, no matter what we're talking about. Kill bowls.
Godfrey.
You wouldn't kill the bowls. They're TV inventory. They're not going anywhere.
No, they're not going anywhere.
I'm saying
December
they should.
windows. They're not going anywhere.
No. I'm saying they should. I don't care about your sunset, just so we can, I'll say it on this show. I don't care.
Well, I really don't. I like your sunset. That's why I'm giving it an option to be a semifinal. I really don't care about your sterile NFL dome stadium. I don't care.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the Sugar maybe is the only one that I feel like exudes character of those. That probably
people just want to go to New Orleans and party.
Well, and then you walk into it and like, I mean, I'm the biggest Atlanta sports homer in the world, but I think the Sugar Bowl has a little bit more weight to it than Jerry World or Mercedes-Benz in terms of a college atmosphere. It's also a tighter, crappier stadium.
It's a more decrepit building.
God, we're in link today, Andy. It's because it's a crappier building and they're all on top of each other and it's not comfortable and there's nowhere to walk around.
You can at least walk to it from your hotel, unlike Dallas.
True.
That's always the key.
Unless you sleep inside the Walmart in Arlington.
That's true.
Just go camp in the parking lot.
So the most heavily patrolled parking lot, Walmart parking lot in America.
An aside to an aside. Ross, I think that last 2 weeks ago on the show, I was comparing the system to basketball, and you guys were like, well, that's not the worst thing in the world. A lot of 1 and 2 seeds in the basketball tournament don't necessarily tank their conference tournament, but they are kind of fine if they bow out on Thursday or Friday. Let's get right. Let's get healthy. We know we got a 2 or a 1 coming up. We're going to be good in our regional. I don't mind this plan from Georgia so much as I do think about, like, all right, let's talk about Texas A&M for a second. An opportunity to play for the Southeastern Conference Championship, something you've never won. Or what if it was Ole Miss?
Right.
Charter member,
Texas
never
A&M,
won.
Ole Miss SEC championship game would be 2 first-time participants.
Fans, boosters, and I think maybe even the coaches would re-engineer some of the priority there, because also if you do get bounced in the playoff, inevitably, you've really got something to plant a flag on in terms of, like, satiating your booster core. But we're not. We're talking about Alabama. We're talking about that's old hat to them. To me, you pointed out something that's much more broken, which is that you are rewarding A&M and Alabama for going to Atlanta and playing essentially sort of a bowl game by then not having anything in College Station, not having anything in Tuscaloosa. The environments are going to be more rewarding in Athens and potentially Oxford to host those first round SEC playoff games.
Yeah. So not just, I think, the issue of the broken sort of system is the fact that the top 4 seeds don't get to host a game, although they get a bye, but the bye is another part that was changed, right? It was changed this year, but it's another issue that devalues the championship games, because the previous rule, you had to win a conference championship to get the bye. And while that threw off a lot of the seeding, it put some value in the conference championship games. That's why they created it. It was that when they created it 4 years ago, that's why they did it. And now, right,
they've created it for 5 power conferences.
Why did they do that? And who did that? Okay, they did it, and who did it was that the SEC and the Big Ten did it because they got their butts hurt that Arizona State and Boise got a bye, and that's the absolute truth.
Oh yes, 100%.
So I don't want to hear from Greg Sankey in 2 weeks talking about need to take a look at this because of the sanctity of the Southeastern Conference Championship. You did this. You devalued your own game because you got mad that Arizona State got a bye.
And now, like the participants of the Big Ten and the participants of the SEC championship game almost certainly all those teams will fill the 1 through 4 slots and get a bye, no matter what happens in the championship game. That's how it's playing out. Unless you have a lot of losses here late, like that looks like how it's going to play out. And so again, we're coming back to, so why are we playing this championship game? And the answer usually is, well, you want to win the conference championship. But no, that shifted now to a national championship, like the chase for a conference title and whatever, a big bowl game. All of that is in the past, right? Everybody's chasing the playoff. What you do in the playoff.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's in lower leagues because you still need to win the ACC, the Big 12. And if you're in the group of 5 as a coach, look, I watched MAC football last night in the hotel. Winning the MAC is pretty much the only goal they got, okay? Because then you're going to go to the GMAC Fart Bowl in Piscatawny in, mid-December, okay, in front of 500 people. So winning the MAC matters.
Man, but you are killing the Motor City Bowl here. How dare you?
I kind of tried to mash Mobile and Detroit in my head really fast, just of like the game that you watch on December 22nd, so you don't have to talk to your
cities.
Well, it's such similar relevance. It's the game that you watch 3 days before Christmas because you don't want to talk to your racist uncles. Like that's why that game is on, is so we don't have to talk to each other. Like that's why it exists. It's television inventory. Personal. Okay. The other issue here is that, Ross, we've really created kind of a saw trap here, because if we remove this now, let's say Indiana and Ohio State are going to be undefeated going into Indianapolis, okay? Which feels like likely, right? It's a good scenario. If we remove the caveat that they created this past cycle, we're then punishing them for going to their conference championship game, because then both of those teams would suffer. One of those teams is going to suffer their first loss of the season, and then we'd be knocked out of the bye. And so the logic dictates that, well, I finished the regular season undefeated. I went to my conference championship game. I took my first loss, and then you knocked me for it. So we've created the perfect saw trap. Yep. There's no solution here other than to eliminate the conference championship games outright, and that ain't going to happen.
There's sort of an unwritten rule going on, too, with the conference championship. You touched on it there. Like, if you're in the top 4 going into the championship games, right, you're probably going to stay in the top 4. If you're in the top 12, and if you're in the playoff, and we saw it last year with SMU, and you're playing in your championship game and you're in the playoff before the championship game, according to the rankings, you're probably staying there. So again, all of these things devalues the championship game. I had someone maybe last week tell me just flat out, and this isn't any groundbreaking thing. I've written about the future of the championship games before, reported it out. Like, the championship games are going away. Whether you like it or not, they're out of here. It's just a matter of when. But last week, somebody very high up, sort of looking at all this and looking at all these things that we're talking about, right, was just flatly said, the championship games don't matter anymore. So we got to figure out a way to change it. It's going to happen because the playoffs are only going to expand, and that's going to devalue them more.
Except that 15 million people watched the Georgia-Texas SEC championship game last year.
And it's worth, I believe, Andy, 60, it depends on who you talk to, right? 60 to 80 to even $100 million one single game.
Yeah. And the city I'm in right now would be severely pissed off if it went away, because it's about as bankable a live event as one could create in this part of the country.
But before we move to some juicy off the field stuff, one more thing, and I'm glad we're talking about games not mattering, because that's the subject of this next thing too. We got to talk about what Pat Narduzzi said, because the college game day game, and I realize if you're a YouTube TV person, you don't even worry about what that is because you can't watch college game day, but the college game day game is Notre Dame at Pitt. Pat Narduzzi got up at a press conference earlier this week and said, basically, I don't care if they hang 100 on us. It doesn't matter. It's not an ACC game. Now, look, he's right. And Pitt is very much in the mix for the ACC title. They still play Georgia Tech and Miami in the ACC. So their road to the ACC title, they would earn it if they got to the ACC title game. But you don't say that out loud. You got a game this week.
Why? I love it. I love the idea of saying, like, hey, there's a flaw here. Let's identify it, and let's not mince around and
because
put on.
You've got to coach your team. I don't want my team to be like, well, you don't care about this, so why the hell am I practicing for this?
He doesn't care. I'd flood money on Notre Dame. Didn't one of us pick Notre Dame this week?
One of us might have a feeling about Notre Dame.
Yeah. I'd have a mortgage-sized feeling about Notre Dame because Narduzzi is telling you what's happening.
Yeah.
So I also think It's potentially a bit of managing your fans' expectations. Like I turned on the film from Notre Dame on Sunday, and we're gonna lose, so I'm gonna say this.
Yeah,
it might be that as well as
This sort of evolves our conversation into the conference championship games. We just talked about how much they don't matter for all these programs, right? Rankings, whatever, all this stuff. But like for the ACC, it does matter. Right? It does matter. You get your 1A because they're a one-bid league, basically. And so it does matter. For the G5, it does matter. So I don't want to say for everybody they don't matter, because there are these pockets every year where you're going to have one or two be in an elimination game. The Big 12 might too, right? The Big 12 might. It kind of depends on how that goes. But the ACC certainly will be, almost certainly will be an elimination game. And what's funny is these championship games, like all three of us probably go to them, and have gone to them over the years, and you're always debating which one to go to, which is the more important. And usually you flocked, or at least in the past for me, I flocked to the one that is the biggest, right? The top, the top 5 matchup or whatever. But now, to me, the most interesting thing is to go to the one that's an elimination game. So like last year I went to the ACC. This year I'll probably go to the ACC or Big 12, probably because those have the most intrigue.
It's so weird that my one of my favorite memories of covering a conference championship game was when Michigan State was playing Ohio State, and Narduzzi runs past all of the reporters on press row in the middle of the third quarter, takes the elevator down, goes down to the defensive side. He was defensive coordinator at Michigan State at the time, turns the benches around and MFs his entire defense for like 2.5 live minutes. They turn the benches back around. Michigan State wins the game. So this is more of a Pat Narduzzi appreciation moment than anything else. There's no way
he's always said what's on his mind. And
God bless him. Also, Cade Bell running a great offense this year. Like it's been an unkillable tenure for Narduzzi, because I know his name would get floated periodically as a hot seat, but like I don't think that was ever a realistic situation at Pitt, because I think he has a lot of clout and equity there, and it's paying off. And if they were to win out, it would be one of the more remarkable runs that we've had in this system, or era, or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah. Well, and again, their remaining ACC schedule is as hard as you can make it. So they would have to earn it. But I find it hilarious, because you do have to coach your team. And if I'm a Pitt player this week, I'm like, do I really need to work that hard at practice? My coach kind of gave the game away here. But who knows?
But Andy, do you risk injury?
Well, but you're going to play your starter. I'm assuming he'll play his starters. We'll see.
Who knows?
That would be something if because this is their most prominent in terms of television time slot and channel game all year. Like if
Andy, I'm teasing something. I want to ask Ross, based on his visits to Oxford and Starkville. I'm teasing something. We'll talk about it in the next segment on the importance of these games.
Yes. Okay. When we come back, off the field stuff colliding with on the field stuff. First, we got to talk about Brian Kelly's lawsuit against LSU, but also Ross was in Oxford, and Lane Kiffin is a wanted man, and they play the school that wants him this week. We'll talk about it when we come back. We're back at the College Football Enquirer, and we recorded Tuesday's show a little early, and so we did not get the fun news that dropped late Monday night by friend of the pod, originator of the pod, godfather of the pod, podfather, if you will, Dan Wetzel, that Brian Kelly was suing LSU to get the entirety of his buyout. We've all since read the lawsuit. It is hilarious in many, many ways, and so indicative of this entire situation. So now I turn it over to our LSU whisperer, Ross Dellenger, to get his thoughts on the entire sordid affair.
Yes. Well, if you go back, I think around 2 weeks ago, we talked about it on the pod, my story about sort of diving deep into the governor and Scott Woodward and the personal sort of stuff going on there, and how politics in Louisiana and all that, and LSU football, all that stuff. You'll find in that story about halfway down a quote about that the expectation was this issue with Brian Kelly's buyout will find a Louisiana courtroom. And I think it was sort of always the plan after a couple of conversations early on with Brian Kelly's representatives that it was always the plan that they were not going to pay him, to put it simply. And, I think it's he's due $800,000 at the end, like a monthly installments. And at some point, I foresee those installments stop being paid. And Brian Kelly's representatives obviously didn't wait for that to happen. And perhaps it's already happened, I'm not sure. But they filed suit, and now I don't sense that anybody at LSU is sort of backing down from that, especially the guy who seems to make a lot of decisions there, who lives at the governor's mansion in Baton Rouge. And I think that we're going to probably see the inside potentially of a Louisiana courtroom, which will be somewhat unprecedented in the buyout situation.
Yeah. Let's go to Discovery. Let's go Discovery.
Yeah, that could get interesting. Yeah.
Well, okay, Ross, I have a question for you, because this is something that the timeline gets laid out pretty thoroughly in the lawsuit, and you mentioned a couple conversations about potential settlements, and this is with Scott Woodward when he was still the AD, and they offered $25 million upfront and then they removed the duty to mitigate. So essentially, we will give you $25 million in cash. If you get another job, feel free to double dip. We're not taking that off the total. They then raised that to $30 million over 2 payments. Same thing, remove the duty to mitigate, which if I'm Brian Kelly and I plan to work again, if you can get me between 30, 35 million, I will probably end up making more money if I take that deal. But I don't think they got high enough on that one. But my question for you, Ross, is this. Scott Woodward, being the politically connected person he is, did he see how the wind was blowing and decide to fire Brian Kelly before the powers that be, the governor, the incoming president that the governor was about to have his handpicked board select? Did Scott Woodward jump the gun firing Brian Kelly to be like, hey, see, I'm on your side here?
Yeah. I think that would probably be an assumption that makes sense to me. Because now they're saying, I think, as you maybe mentioned, like in the lawsuit,
they said Woodward didn't have the authority to fire him, which he very much did as the sitting AD.
Right, as he was the athletic director at the time, which is funny because I think we talked about it on the show. I walked everybody through that Sunday, and I wrote about it in that long piece. Is when the governor and sort of the political machine found out that Scott had made this decision, they got involved and paused everything, paused an announcement, and said, we got a meeting at the governor's mansion. Oh, by the way, Scott Woodward, you're not invited. So that's a pretty clear sign. I think that is what you're saying, Andy. That's what the governor and all the major decision makers politically in Louisiana thought was, oh, no, he can't just do that. We're just not agreeing to pay all that. Let's have this meeting.
That's what I was just
night.
wondering if Scott was doing that to save himself potentially.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe so.
Feels like, wouldn't it would have been too late though by the timeline, Andy, right? Like at this point, if he knows that Landry's pressing down.
I'm not sure if Scott's very politically connected, so he probably heard the rumblings, but maybe he didn't realize the severity of it until he looked up at all those empty seats during the A&M game.
Yeah, maybe it's more he probably overestimated his position individually, because Landry, based off of these really sort of bombastic, again, very reminiscent of like that MAGA style of politics, he was very populist and telling everyone what he's going to do. They threw the baby out with the bathwater, and maybe Scott probably didn't calculate for that. Like we've seen a lot of coaches fired in the court of public opinion, but Landry, I mean, he sort of castrated Woodward publicly before at the snap press conference. I've never seen that before.
And we've all talked to some people. I gather that the plan was to fire Scott Woodward and Brian Kelly together.
Yes,
and
I would agree.
Woodward kind of messed up that plan.
Yeah, he may have gone in, like you said, he may have gone in and said, I'm not going to wait for somebody else to do it, right? I'm going to go in and I'm going to do it. And then that way, yeah, maybe that, maybe my job is sort of protected.
Whatever that was, they now have to figure out, are they going to pay him? Tom Mars, who the attorney from Arkansas, who has been involved in a lot of these cases, he seems to think it's open and shut that they're going to have to pay Brian Kelly, but it is a Louisiana courtroom and an entity representing the state of Louisiana. So I don't know that it's as cut and dried as everybody thinks.
The way it was explained to me, and I passed the complaint over to my Phantom Island co-host Ryan Nanny because he was a lawyer. That plus the people I've spoken with, and I would probably lean towards what Mars is saying, that it feels like anyone with a legal background who's chimed in on this publicly seems to think this is very one-sided. I think the timing of the filing of the complaint as well was a little bit of if Kelly and his representation maybe dotting I's and crossing T's before they went out and said, like, it's interesting to me that the timing of this filing basically says, like, we're sure we did our research on this. We feel like this is a slam dunk. So it looks worse and worse for the LSU side of things. By the way, I just want to pivot real fast. You got to hire a coach. This is what's going on. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe y'all have different recollection of this. The first time I remember this strategy being employed in modern college football was actually David Beatty at Kansas. I wrote about this at length when it happened when I was back at SB
ended
Nation.
so poorly. The deposition videos,
that's
hilarious.
true.
So badly, and it was Jeff Long who, has made many long-headed decisions, but this one was just magnifique because he was basically Kansas was very cash poor at the time, trying to hire Les Miles, which that worked out great. But they were trying to scare up some money, and they didn't want to pay off some of Beatty's buyout at the time, so they kind of drummed up what it. Yeah. By the way, I guess I should say not a significant amount of money, but this is Kansas. This is pre-NIL, pre-rev. This is a very different world, even though this was like 8 years ago or something. That's the first time I could remember this, where the agent side of the world, the representation side of the world said, whoa, like schools are now trying to actually flip the switch on those silly little character clauses. And it was a way of weaponizing at the time, the NCAA enforcement apparatus, even the most ticky-tack or interpretive nonsense things, that's what enforcement excelled at, was ticky-tack nonsense violations. They were using that to save money. By the way, the person who pulled this off effortlessly is in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, Danny White did it
Danny White
to
saved significant. Danny White saved a significant amount of money by doing this effectively, but also kind of did it, I think, with a little bit more booster support to cut off Jeremy Pruitt and then turn the page on a terrible decade for Tennessee athletics. So that's when I remember this becoming a thing. This feels a rebuke.
Now that you've brought it up, I do want to finish the story of what happened with David Beatty because it's so funny.
Go for it.
They fire David Beatty, and they say it's because of these NCAA violations where they had analysts actually coaching on the field because analysts weren't allowed to coach on the field at the time. So David Beatty's attorney, and I'm blanking on his name. He's based in Texas. I think he wears a cowboy hat in his official photo on his firm site. But he brings them in, and I believe this is the Kansas leadership he has in the deposition. I think Jeff Long was in this deposition, and they show Jeff Long video. Now this is several years after David Beatty's firing. They show Jeff Long video of Les Miles assistants or Les Miles analysts coaching on the field at practice. And they say, well, this is what you fired David Beatty for. Are you prepared to fire Les Miles for this? And it's like, oh no. And very quickly after they paid David Beatty.
Yeah.
I'm looking.
That was bizarre.
Out.
So that didn't make it into the courtroom, right? They ended up
No, they settled it.
No.
And it was slightly
I was trying to think
less,
of any,
but it basically ended up being the same.
I was trying to think of any of them have made it into the courtroom.
No, Brett
major
Bielema
college football
against the
buyout.
Razorback Foundation, because the Razorback Foundation said he gave the Patriots a sweetheart deal. I only know about this one because I got subpoenaed in it. And
very good.
But
nice.
They ended up settling.
Yeah. And maybe maybe this ends up settling for 30 or
Michael
35 million.
Shout out to Michael Lyons.
Excellent work.
If you're ever done wrong by a university and you're a head coach, call Michael Lyons, a Dallas-based attorney representing Beatty. He got $2.55 in the settlement.
How about that plug?
He is awesome. Well, that's only because I will pay homage, as I'm sure you two will as well.
Yeah.
If you're a good quote, and if I remember right, he's also one of those guys who immediately gets on the phone and tells you how much he hates the media and then proceeds to do the dog and pony show for us.
Perfect.
I love those guys.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Love that. You don't hate the media
like
that
someone
much,
in the
dog.
White House. Someone in the White House,
you don't hate
hates the
you
media,
don't hate the media
but
at all, to be
somehow
honest.
always finds a way to talk to the media and read about the media. There's nothing better than
I was gonna say David Beatty did not like good coach, good human being, like got screwed in that situation. Some of these guys, there's some gray area. That was a case that felt egregious at the time because you're like, David Beatty is not the evil kingpin that any of these parties were trying to make him out to be.
So I don't know how this is going to end, but it feels like the LSU Louisiana side is ready to and thinks they like their chances in a Louisiana courtroom. So,
which means they'll probably slang a lot of mud. I think that before
I think that's
you
probably
get
accurate.
To discovery, you're going to have mud being slung by both sides.
Yeah.
If it goes to trial, are you just going to move back home for a little while?
Yeah, might as well move back. I know. Just cover the shit show from the ground.
Buddy, did
you ever sell the house in Baton Rouge?
I did. I sold it.
Oh, shoot.
2-3 years ago. We sold it, unfortunately. So, no.
Oh, well, I tell you what.
Which it was walkable to the Louisiana governor's mansion, by the way. I mean, you could walk.
If the SEC,
you could see it.
If the SEC network
they might give
had
you a guest room, Ross, the way things are going.
Yeah,
if the SEC network, if they had a pair, and they don't, because they have to show fealty to the league, that's live coverage. That's live coverage, my friend.
Yeah.
We're going in court TV style.
Trial.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh,
yeah. Put Peter. Hey, Peter, you're listening? Peter, do that one. Cover that one. I want the desk and the logo, and then you can have Sankey as your analyst outside that courtroom. Let's go, boys.
Peter Burns and some former federal prosecutor just sitting there breaking it all down.
They do it at media days. It's just as arbitrary. Let's go, boys. Come on.
I'm with you. All right, guys. Let's stay off the field, but sort of on the field, because Ross, you're in Oxford, Mississippi, and Lane Kiffin, obviously wanted by the University of Florida, currently employed by Ole Miss. Beating Florida this weekend is the goal. Florida's coming. Ole Miss trying to make the playoff. Ole Miss in a great position to make the playoff. They are 9-1 right now, and they play Florida. They have a week off. They play the Egg Bowl, so they'll be heavily favored in both these games. But how weird is this situation where the school that wants to hire him is now coming out like all the Scott Strickland, the athletic director of Florida, will be in the booth. It will be in the visiting AD's box on Saturday in Oxford.
Just my visit. I was only there for, I don't know, like 5 hours or so, probably in Oxford, but was able to swing through and I'll have a story. If it's not already out, it'll be out soon on a sit down with Lane Kiffin and Keith Carter, the athletic director, as well, and some players there. I don't know how to describe what is sort of like the lingering feeling is there. I would probably say it's sort of like a sensitive time. There's some tension. There's this big sort of unanswered question lingering over everything. Is he going to stay or is he going to go? And I want to say I appreciate in this situation where it's very sensitive that everybody's sitting down with me, specifically Lane Kiffin, because I think there's a lot of coaches who probably would crawl in the bunker here and not want to talk at all. But there were some ground rules, you might say, about the interview, which I expect, which was, not going to talk about the job. Which during the interview, because of how the course of the interview went, at some point, in typical Lane fashion, he brought up and said, something, and then said the job thing, that we're not going to talk about. So it's kind of lingering. This thing is kind of sitting on everything. And Keith Carter was good. Met with him for a little while. I mean, look, it's no secret. Like, he's communicating with Jimmy Sexton and Lane about, a future extension, a new contract. One of the things Keith Carter said is that we're sort of not done here, not just this year, obviously, but not done with what we want to do here. And he said that Lane agrees with him that it's not finished. And there's a worry, I think, a little bit, maybe a lot, I don't know, there, that all of this is obviously going to be a distraction. And we saw what happened last year, how Ole Miss sort of fell off and missed the playoff. We saw what happened in 2022, where Auburn was flirting with Lane, and then they lost their last 2 games, maybe 3 of the last 4 or something. And so we saw all this sort of happen, and everybody says, right, that they've learned from it. And what I thought was interesting, it's sort of my lead to my story, is behind Lane, right behind him, sort of unmistakable, very big, is a picture of Kobe Bryant with the words above it, block out the noise, stay focused.
Okay. Ross, thank you for your reporting. What if you are the one creating the noise and then profiting by telling every person to block it out? Mm-hmm. This is where I'm officially issuing a moratorium on rat poison. This thing that coaches like to do. Yes. They picked it up from Nick Saban. You are the author of the noise. This isn't like your quarterback is considering transferring, or we're going into a big free agency period with your roster. You are the sole author of the noise. One of the most beautiful things that college football coaches can do that they don't get called out enough on is that they manufacture their own struggle, their own strife, their own adversity. All he has to do, Andy said it last week, because I think we were talking about Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. All you got to do right now is pick up the phone and call Jimmy and say, I'm doing X or I'm doing Y. So this idea that, we're fighting against you guys in the media and all this speculation and we're banding together as a team. No, you are the author of all of this. Lane Kiffin is exceptionally good at making things about Lane Kiffin, which is the moment that Florida lost to South Florida. Everyone in the industry knew Lane's about to pitch a tent and throw a circus all the way through January, whether they make the playoff or not.
See, okay, the timeline is what I will push back on, because I want to ask you two this. This is a question I've been asking in the agent world a lot over the last couple of weeks. At what point does Keith Carter need an answer? Because if Lane decides to leave, Keith Carter has to replace him, and all the potential candidates who would be that replacement are going to get snapped up that first week in December.
There is an anxiety right now. I can tell you this, like, I guess as a reporter, capital R, there's an anxiety right now about trying to fashion a pocket deal amongst some big time representatives in the agent world. And a pocket deal would basically be if then this. So in other words, if we lose Lane Kiffin, then could we secure your client if? The problem with that is that it sort of, as Andy's implying, gums up the works. There's a cascade effect of when things open, who hires, what openings are then created by that. So there's a doomsday scenario if you're Ole Miss. If Florida's willing to wait through a first round loss, then Ole Miss would not be shopping from the most premier shelf, because a lot of those candidates, like a John Summerall,
would already
be
John
hired.
Summerall as the example. John Summerall would probably love to get the Ole Miss job, but John Summerall also could be a target of Auburn and a target of Arkansas. And is he going to wait around when he's been trying to get an SEC job for all these years? When the SEC job is on the table, is he going to wait?
I think obviously that's up to Summerall and his representatives. However, I think not all of those jobs are created equal. He was an assistant coach at Ole Miss. He has fondness for the area. I think that would weigh against Auburn. I don't know how it would weigh specifically against Arkansas. I'd probably put Arkansas
from Huntsville, so I think that would weigh in Auburn's favor. So you've got Auburn all of these things.
Auburn it's Auburn because it should be Auburn, because it's an open job. It's a national championship winner. They're courting you. That's the most logical hire of the cycle. The last time I said that was Luke Fickell to Wisconsin. So don't listen to me. I'm just a sports writer.
Well,
yes, Ross.
I know, Andy. I think your point. I think the biggest decision here that maybe potentially has to happen first isn't Lane Kiffin's decision.
It's
Keith
Keith
Carter's decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's going to be really fascinating. And this is what happens in sort of an expanded playoff world do
you gentlemen recall where the phrase Michigan man became popularized? When that happened?
Bo Schembechler, I assume.
He said it in March 1989. Everybody assumes it's about football. It's actually about basketball. So Michigan had a coach named Bill Frieder. They had a great year in the 88-89 season. They were heading toward the NCAA tournament, and Bill Frieder made a verbal agreement to take the Arizona State job at the end of the season. Bo Schembechler found out and fired Bill Frieder. He said a Michigan man will coach Michigan, promoted assistant Steve Fisher, and Steve Fisher then went on to lead Michigan to the national title. Does Keith Carter have to pull a Bo Schembechler at some point?
Well, I can tell you for a fact that a lot of people are trying to figure out, can we sell Pete Golding?
Well, I can
Michigan.
Look, if you wanted to do it like this, I can give you an interim situation that gets you through the playoff. You make Joe Judge the acting head coach. You let Pete Golding and Charlie Weiss Jr. call it, and you're good.
They're not gonna. And I don't know if there's a universe in which Keith Carter has the. No, I don't think Keith Carter's going to say, "Tell me now or you're out," and we're gonna let the coordinators coach through the playoff. That's not going to happen.
Okay, I'm just throwing it out there because, again, at some point you need an answer.
Yep.
And maybe you get the answer and you just deal with it quietly after that.
I know you need an answer, but you don't have any sway in this. Like all the power's on the other side of the table. This is being a part of the Lane Kiffin experience. This is what you signed up for. And don't let him fool you. They'd build a statue for the good and the bad. They love him. They love him. Oh my God, they love him.
Oh yeah.
And I think staying is a definite possibility. So,
yeah, and that's one thing.
If he stays, they'll rename the stadium. I'm not kidding.
If he wins the national championship this year, they probably will. And they certainly will build a statue, right? They'll, I mean, if he makes so
they're not
one
win
thing,
the national championship this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it, but hey, you never know.
No.
The discussion in his office ended up to his family, which has been, he's talked about a lot over the last couple of years, and his sort of turnaround of his life and the drinking, right, and the working out and the hot yoga and all that good stuff. But it was like really interesting. We sort of dug deep on his kids, and I mean, for the first time, I think he said in 12 years, he is living in a city with at least most of his children. He's got one in college at USC, but his high school. His son, who's a sophomore in high school at Oxford High, as a quarterback, and then his daughter Landry, who's a junior at Ole Miss. He's doing, he's going to they're in the playoff now, high school playoffs, and the Oxford High is very good. And he went to the playoff game. He's going to go to the playoff game. He's going to be able to watch his son play. He's going to sorority events with his daughter. And his ex-wife Layla is even back in town, sort of raising the kids with him there. So. This is a Bravo show. It would be the Kiffins. Yes, the Kiffins.
Maybe they're all blonde. Where you can't tell the girlfriend from the daughter. That's a joke he's made. That's not me being mean. That's a joke he's made before.
He the point is, like, he really is genuinely, you can tell the way he talks about it, like nearly like tearing up, that he is genuinely incredibly happy and probably the happiest he's ever been in his life. So you kind of ask, like, well, why leave?
And he's a football coach.
And he's a football coach. And I think we all grew up. He grew up with,
TV,
I aspire to coach at these jobs. Yeah. And certainly Florida, where he has a place in Boca, not that far from Gainesville. I mean, far enough.
Gainesville resident here. Very far.
Very far, yeah. Not when you have a PJ, Andy.
That's
you
true.
You get there in 38 minutes, probably.
Andy, you just got to level up, baby.
Yeah.
You got to get off that
exactly right. I'm just making enough money.
Yeah, you need to talk to Don 3 about that, son.
And this is a conversation with Keith Carter had, a little bit Lane, but Keith Carter especially, is like these jobs, and we've talked about the show a lot, right, with the distribution of talent. the jobs are a little closer. Not saying they're the same, or Ole Miss is a better job than Florida or LSU, but they're certainly closer, and you can get players that you used to not get at Ole Miss, probably because of the compensation and because of the transfer portal. So I think that's all about this. It is
not when Tommy Tuberville left Ole Miss for Auburn in 1998.
Oh God, no, 98. Yeah. One pushback a little bit, and it's not like I'm pushing against you, Ross, because this is what they're putting out to anybody who talks to them in the media. This whole thing, like my family's here and I go to hot yoga. By the way, if Oxford, Mississippi solves a drinking problem, it would be the first time, and I speak from personal experience. Okay, that build a statue for the man for getting sober in Lafayette County, because it's really hard to do.
Yes,
all of that works both ways. And that's why they're doing it. That's why there was an SEC Network documentary about all this. It works both ways, and here's how. If he stays, he's writing his own legend to build that statue and to have ultimate and total power over an SEC football program. That's the obvious one. The way it works on the other direction is if you're Scott Strickland and you're Florida, all you're hearing and seeing in the media is how this isn't the mercurial Joey Freshwater Lane Kiffin, the problematic Lane Kiffin, the tarmac Lane Kiffin, having the problems with Layla Lane Kiffin.
Right, 4 years ago.
Exactly.
Because of all those things.
So Ole Miss fans who are beating their chests like, we got him sober. Okay, great. You may be cleaning him up for the next gig. That's why all this is in the media. That's why they're doing this.
Right. And where did Layla Kiffin go to high school? And where did she go to college?
Yeah, Gainesville, Florida.
Buchholz High School, University of Florida. Guy I played with is married to one of her sorority sisters. So, like, it's how that works. But everybody, I love, because the Florida fans and the Ole Miss fans can build a perfectly logical case for him to do one or the other thing. And I'm telling you right now, the only person who knows what he's going to do is him. We're not inside his head.
We can clip
I don't know
this.
If he knows right now.
I think he
I don't know.
We can clip this and replay it when it comes. This is not going to end without having a 36 to 48 hour period of time in December when the entirety of the sport is focused on Lane Kiffin. That's what Lane Kiffin wants. That's what gets Lane Kiffin off until he can hold trophies, because he's never won a division. He's never won a conference.
He might do that. He also might do that.
He might, but history tells us that he won't. And so this is the Lane Kiffin experience. And once that 36, 48 hours expires, then we will be able to move on from this. It is the Lane Kiffin show, and no one else is the star.
It's got good content. The show provides good content, Godfrey.
I mean, it's just so funny to see, like,
we're giving the SEC Network gold here. Like, this is the Bravo show.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's Iraqi television. They can't touch any of this kind of stuff. I mean, that's why they have to do is publish the press release.
Bravo show when you think about it, though.
Oh, without a doubt. Now, so they should go to someone on a third party level and just follow the family around town. Absolutely, because the city would love it too. All Oxford is like a wannabe 30A Seaside now. I mean, oh, dude, that's so white. They would love it.
Landry's drinking on the patio at Bourrée now.
Oh my God, y'all, they're filming over at the grocery. Let's go. None of this is going to end until he becomes the focal point. That may happen after the end of the first round, though, Andy, to your point.
I love how you're an Ole Miss grad, so you can do this, but your accent is the Parker Posey, North Carolina accent from
that's what. And oh man, if we really want to get, that's actually a Laurel, Mississippi Pine Belt accent that she stretched into a Carolina. Ross knows what I'm talking about. That's actually a Pine Belt accent. So if you go to Hattiesburg,
Laurel, Mississippi, suburban Hattiesburg, you didn't know we were going to get that deep, did you?
I-59, baby.
Yeah.
That's the best way to get to Tuscaloosa.
Gentlemen, we got to pick some games. When we come back, I've got a feeling. Welcome back to the College Football Enquirer. It is time for I've Got a Feeling.
You think football is still fun?
I feel great, man.
I got a bad feeling about this.
There are games. We will pick them. We probably will pick them incorrectly. Although my weather-based Iowa prediction was pretty damn good last week. They did cover.
I feel like you're doing good. I feel like you're doing better.
Better, not good, not well.
Okay.
Neither well nor good, but better. I would agree with that. Godfrey, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I just picked because I'm hoping something chaotic happens. And so speaking of Harper No and the Parker Posey White Lotus accent, how about
that's
those
right.
Duke Blue
They
Devils?
went to Duke.
Yeah. By the way, if you stretch that vowel, you end up in Philadelphia. So that's where you go to Wawa for hoagies.
You're Delco.
Yeah, Delco. It's very similar to Carolina because everybody from Jersey moved there. So I like Duke this weekend just because of the chaos math of Duke staying alive in the ACC championship race at 5-4. Virginia's fun, if not mercurial. And I do think that, I've also apparently tied myself to Manny Diaz is Penn State's Elko. I've said that on the show now. So I have to
I think when Jim Mora beat him, I think that probably got you off the hook there.
Yeah. So I'm going to take Duke just for fun. The spread is currently at 4. I think I took it at 5.5, whatever. I think I'm just taking Duke straight up.
All right.
I think, look, Virginia lived very dangerously. Virginia gave off a lot of 2024 Pitt vibes, like when Pitt was 7-0.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of knew at some point Pitt was going to hit a point in the schedule where things were going to get gnarly.
Yeah.
I think Virginia may have hit that point with Wake Forest last week, and it continues into the Duke game. That's just, and the other part of it is the Chandler Morris getting knocked out, and we're not entirely sure what his situation is. If Daniel Kalen has to start, then obviously you're probably much more likely to think Duke's going to win. Although it seems like Chandler Morris is going to be able to get back.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation because of how, it's not something you want to rush, whatever. I know it's a subjective deal with head, but Virginia, I'm not going to do the Virginia was a fraud thing, but there have been some marginal and momentum-based victories here. Duke, until they saw Georgia Tech, was on a nice little win streak, and I was kind of coming around on them. And then, of course, the Manny thing happened. There's talent on this Duke team. There's it looks. Well,
they have a better quarterback than almost everybody they play.
Yeah, but the problem is that's exactly what it looks like, but nothing more. It's like an incomplete elevation of a roster where you spent well at one position. And I think we talked about this all the way back after the Illinois game, because that was the last time I was really four-quartered on Duke football. Was like, yeah, I got a great quarterback. Wideouts maybe not as much. It's an incomplete but talented team, and I do feel like, given the hiccups of the ACC, they're good for a fun win here. Also, they have UNC after that. That's going to be a weirdly fun game, like to watch, sort of must see, more maybe for Schadenfreude purposes.
So Ross had to step out because real life has intervened. He said, "Make my pick for me," and he has already told us what his pick is. So he has Minnesota plus 25.5 against Oregon, and
we could have picked something bad and tanked him. Look at you being noble.
Well, I don't know if this is a good pick or not, because basically if Darius Taylor plays, Minnesota's covering.
Yeah. Right.
And if Darius Taylor doesn't play, then they're not, probably.
Is this a candidate for the old Bruce Feldman body blow theory for Oregon coming off of that game?
The Iowa game, it's entirely possible. And it's also a look ahead game because they have USC next week. So
it is.
Oregon has a very tricky end of the schedule. They got through the Iowa thing, but this Minnesota Friday night, like it's a weird situation. And then you also have USC next week, and then a rivalry game against Washington. Like, Oregon is not out of the woods, even though they've only got one loss.
Yes, I would agree. Now, your pick, sir, is the one I'm most interested in because it feels like easy money.
It does, which is probably why it'll be wrong. But yeah, I'm listening to Pat Narduzzi. I'm listening to what he's telling me, and I'm following it. So I think the people have followed it. The money has followed that too, because this line opened at Notre Dame minus 10.5 against Pitt. It was up to minus 12.5 Wednesday night. As we're recording this, it's back down to minus 11.5. But yeah, I'll take Notre Dame to cover in this one. And Notre Dame, if you watch them most of the season, like since they lost to Texas A&M, since they've been on this win streak, the way Notre Dame, other than the Arkansas game where they really just jumped all over Arkansas, but most of the games is Notre Dame kind of feels the team out like a boxer, just sort of going through the first couple rounds saying, oh, these, figuring out your tendencies. Yeah. and then
Very
just
Georgia.
beats you to a pulp for the rest of the fight.
That's exactly how last week went against Navy, where it was sort of deceptively close at the half. Also weather. And then they were like, oh, okay, we've adjusted to these two things your offense is doing, and then we're done. The run games that Pitt has seen up until this point, inapplicable to what Notre Dame is going to provide you in the second half of this game. This is another reason why I feel like
that's
we're
why
talking.
I brought up earlier in the show, like the idea of Narduzzi may have just watched the film and was like, I can say whatever I want here.
I guess I would say Florida State is maybe the best run offense that they've seen so far. We're talking about Syracuse, Stanford, BC, maybe West Virginia. There's nothing quite on the level of what they've got against this Notre Dame offense. And I think maybe he was as prescient as to just look at it and say, hey, not this week, boys. But no, I feel very good about Notre Dame here. And then Pittsburgh. Also, Pittsburgh has to get ready for Georgia Tech in Miami in successive weeks.
I know. And that's the thing. Like, I understand where Narduzzi's coming from. Because they're going to have to play as well as they played all season in those 2 ACC games to get through them. So
yeah,
I get it. But again, if you're going to say that, then yeah, I'm going to pick the other team to cover.
What's really interesting here is that Notre Dame could beat Pittsburgh and then become the biggest Panther fans in the world, because I don't know how this would shake out. Maybe you can sort this out. I'm doing it in real time. Notre Dame opens the season 0-2. They lose to Miami, right? And so there's been this albatross thing about like, well, if Notre Dame's in the playoff, we got to talk about Miami, right? We're kind of tethered to each other, like you talked about. Pittsburgh has a chance to beat Miami and further bolster its resume.
It eliminates that conversation entirely if Pittsburgh beats Miami.
That's where I'm going at. Is so if Notre Dame can authoritatively beat Pittsburgh like we kind of are projecting they are, and then turn around and really cheer on Pittsburgh, especially in that Miami game. It's a resume game for Notre Dame, which they don't have to have, but it would look really good because the only other ranked team they beat at the time was USC.
Also, if Pitt makes the ACC championship game, that looks great on Notre Dame's resume.
Yeah, this is the number 2 resume win on Notre Dame's, provided it happens, on Notre Dame's schedule this year. This is it.
Yeah,
because otherwise you're stretching, man. This has not been a great Boise State season.
Oh, their
Arkansas
next games
fell
are
apart.
Syracuse and Stanford.
Yeah, I mean, like you really need to, you kind of need to run them out of the stadium this weekend and then turn around and hopefully get them to Charlotte. Although maybe not. The committee just really likes them.
Maybe Marcus at the post-game handshake will like, Pat, here's what we should have done against Miami.
Yeah. Hey, we're sending you the cut-ups tomorrow. This is what we had on you. I've heard of that happening before.
Oh, it's definitely happened before.
Yeah.
Coaches,
you call the next day.
Coaches have no shame about this sort of thing. They're just trying to get their team in the best position. So
yeah. I was embedded with a Willie Fritz team that got its butt kicked by a Dana Holgorsen team years ago. And the next day, Dana Holgerson's defense, Tony Gibson, who's now the head coach at Marshall, called the offensive line coach and the OC for Willie Fritz at the time and said, you had to tell, and we knew when you were going to go inside run on every, and like gave it to him because it was an out of conference game. They weren't going to play each other.
So then
again.
they can correct it the rest of the season.
Yeah. And they did. And then that Fritz team won like 9 in a row. So yeah, it does happen.
Definitely does. Mr. Godfrey, it's been fun. I cannot wait for this weekend. You got huge games. You got games that Pat Narduzzi doesn't think are important, but could be interesting anyway. He says it's noon. Get liquored up.
I'm going.
I see no flaw in that logic.
Absolutely not in Pittsburgh. This week is so big and exciting that I'm going to be at Texas, Georgia, and we barely talked about it. That's where we're at.
I also will be at Texas, Georgia, so I'll see you there.
All right.
Ross will not, but we'll all convene on Sunday morning, and we'll break it all down, and we'll talk to you again on Sunday on the College Football Enquirer.